Hello and welcome to Firstpost Live, where we bring you the day's top 4 stories from across the world. I am Gushin Garland, live from the Firstpost studios. Let's begin with the headlines. Chinese President Xi Jinping invites Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney to visit China, marking the first formal talks between the two nations' leaders since 2017 at the APEC summit. Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te firmly rejects Beijing's one country, two systems proposal, vowing to defend the island's democracy and freedom amid renewed threats from China. Tanzania's military chief calls post-election protesters criminals and vows a crackdown as unrest spreads after opposition leaders were barred from contesting the polls. NVIDIA announces it will supply 260,000 advanced AI chips to South Korea as CEO Wang meets the country's president Lee Jae-myung and tech giant Samsung and SK Hynix at the APEC summit. And India storm into the Women's World Cup final after knocking out defending champions Australia in a fiery semi-final clash, scripting a dominant win that cements their shot at the championship title. Let's begin today with the Russia-Ukraine war. According to Ukrainian officials, the country was hit by one of the biggest overnight drone and missile barrages of the war, damaging energy infrastructure and killing people across multiple regions. Ukraine said waves of Russian drones and missiles struck energy facilities in residential areas overnight. Officials confirmed at least 7 deaths, including a 7-year-old girl, with dozens reportedly injured. Kyiv reported strikes in 9 regions, forcing residents into underground shelters through the night.
Of course it's cold here. Of course I'd rather be at home. It's good that I have the day off today, but I usually have to go to work in the morning. I'd rather sleep at home than in a cold metro station.
Ukraine then announced nationwide electricity limits after energy facilities in multiple regions were hit. Ukraine's largest private energy company, DTEK, said thermal power stations were damaged, calling the attacks a bad blow to winter energy stability. Air Defense Forces said they shot down 592 drones and 31 missiles.
The strike was complex, a combined, deliberately calculated one, designed to make it difficult to counter. There were missiles including ballistic ones and air-launched ballistic types. In total, 52 missiles and more than 600 strike drones were launched, around 400 of them Shahids. Most of the drones were neutralized, and 2/3 of the missiles were also shot down. Ukraine's air defense is saving a significant part of our infrastructure, and this remains the top priority: air defense systems and missiles for them. We are working on this every day.
The Ukrainian Prime Minister accused Russia of trying to force blackouts ahead of winter, calling for more air defense support and sanctions. President Volodymyr Zelensky urged the US, Europe and G7 for additional assistance. Russia said it targeted only Ukrainian military-industrial sites and denied striking civilians. Meanwhile, the Russian Defense Ministry said it shot down 170 Ukrainian drones overnight near its border and around Moscow. Moscow said its strikes were in response to Ukrainian drone attacks on oil and military sites inside Russia. Russian forces also said they have captured villages in the Kharkiv and Zaporizhzhia regions. Ukraine warned blackouts may continue through Friday, with round-the-clock outages in all regions. Officials said restoring power depends on Western equipment and air defense support in the coming months. On a different note, some media reports said that Russian commanders punished soldiers who refused to fight by executing them or sending them on deadly missions. The report said more than 150 troops died in these incidents. Investigators cited in these reports also said complaints filed by soldiers and their families to Russia's military prosecutor rose to nearly 29,000 in the first half of 2025. The Kremlin, however, has rejected these allegations. The latest strikes have added pressure to Ukraine's energy network ahead of winter, while fighting continues across the front lines. Both sides continue air and drone attacks, and authorities expect continued disruptions to civilian services as temperatures drop. The conflict, now in its 4th year, shows little sign of easing as each side prepares for a difficult winter phase. Now moving on. The Trump administration has announced plans to cut refugee admissions to a record low, just 7,500, down from 125,000 last year. In a sharp shift, most of those slots would go to Afrikaners or white South Africans in the 2026 fiscal year. The White House announced the move in a memo published on Thursday. The Trump administration described white South Africans, among other groups, the victims of quote-unquote illegal or unjust discrimination. US President Donald Trump, who has taken a spree of steps to curb migration, had largely frozen refugee arrivals since taking office. But his administration has carved out a striking exception for white South Africans, a group Trump has publicly described as fleeing a terrible situation. Human rights organizations have condemned the new policy, calling it discriminatory and deeply political. They point out, since the refugee program's creation in 1980, more than 2 million people fleeing persecution have been welcomed to the US. But now, with just 7,500 refugees set to be allowed in 2026, the refugee resettlement will be used as a pathway for white immigration in the US. President Trump has also repeatedly described the situation facing white South Africans as genocide, a claim dismissed by Pretoria and independent researchers. Whites, who make up just 7% of South Africa's population, continue to hold a disproportionate share of land and income. The group owns about 2/3 of farmland, while earning on average 3 times more than black South Africans. Much of that imbalance, scholars note, is a legacy of apartheid, the system built and enforced by white-led governments until its abolition in 1994, which denied black South Africans basic political and economic rights for decades. Today, Pretoria says its land reform policies aim to correct those historical injustices, not target any community. And that divide over perception, history and politics came sharply into focus earlier this year when US President Donald Trump hosted his South African counterpart, Cyril Ramaphosa, at the White House. The meeting turned tense as Trump confronted Ramaphosa with allegations of attacks on white farmers, claims long debunked by the South African government. Trump even played a video which he said showed the graves of murdered white farmers. But when Ramaphosa asked where the video was from, Trump said he did not know. Later, it was found that at least a part of the video played and an image flashed by Trump featured events from Congo, now not South Africa.
And those people in many cases are being executed. They're being executed. And they happen to be white, and most of them happen to be farmers. And that's a tough situation. I don't know how you explain that. How do you explain that? They're taking people's land away.
Have they told you where that is, Mr. President? No, I'd like to know where that is, because this I've never seen.
The exchange laid bare how the White House's refugee policy has become entwined with its narrative on South Africa, turning a humanitarian question into a diplomatic flashpoint. As fiscal 2026 begins, the US refugee program enters uncharted territory. Its new face, critics say, reflects not the world's displaced millions, but the politics of preference and a profound redefinition of what it means to seek refuge on American soil. Moving on, gold has always held a special place in India, not just for jewelry, but as an emotion, a tradition and a symbol of security. But this time, something interesting is happening. According to the latest data from the World Gold Council, India's gold demand dropped 16% in the July to September quarter of 2025 compared to the same period last year. In simple terms, people bought less gold. But more money was spent on the shiny metal. Now let's understand how that works. The country's total demand slipped to about 209 tons, down from 248 tons in the same period last year. But here's the twist. Even though people bought less gold, the value of what they bought actually went up. The total worth of gold demand jumped a massive 23%, owing to skyrocketing gold prices. So think of it this way. If gold becomes twice as expensive, you'll buy fewer bangles or coins. but the money you spend might still be same or even more. And that's exactly what's happened.
गोल्ड में बहुत एक्सचेंज में ज़्यादा आ रहा है क्योंकि इतना रेट बढ़ गया है तो हर कोई अफोर्ड नहीं कर पाएगा तो 50 to 60% ओल्ड गोल्ड आ रहा है.
Jewelry demand, which makes up most of India's gold consumption, dropped sharply by 31% in volume. But its value stayed almost flat because prices were so high. Consumers simply adjusted. They bought lighter jewelry, smaller pieces or postponed purchases. Yet, they didn't walk away from gold completely.
अभी सोना का बहुत ही ज़्यादा भाव बढ़ने के हिसाब से सोने का अभी बहुत मंदी है और अभी दागिना कोई लेता नहीं है. घेरा की बहुत मंदी है और बहुत ज़रूरत वाला होता है वही दागिना थोड़ा बहुत लेने आता है और हमारा पास तो ऑर्डरी काम आता है. तो अभी जो छोटा बड़ा शोरूम होता है तो ऑर्डरी काम एकदम ही ख़त्म हो चुका है और अभी जो बड़ा शोरूम है हुआ तो होलसेल में काम चलता है तो वो बाहर से मंगा लेते हैं. उनके पास जाता है तो हमारा छोटा कारीगर का हाल अभी बहुत ही बुरा है.
Meanwhile, something unexpected happened. Investment demand for the precious metal surged during the same period. In fact, gold bought as an investment, such as in bars, coins or ETFs, shot up 20% by volume and a massive 74% by value. This shows that while people may be cutting back on ornaments, they are still betting on gold, just in a different form. Why? Because gold is not just about weddings anymore. It's about safety. Globally, investors are worried about the prolonged US government shutdown, economic uncertainty, and trade tensions. Central banks across the world are buying record amounts of gold to secure their reserves. At the same time, international gold prices are touching new highs. The average gold price in India this quarter was nearly 97,000 rupees per 10 grams, up almost 46% from a year ago. Worldwide, it's hovering somewhere near $4,000 per ounce. Experts say this rise has been fueled by a weaker dollar, stronger central bank buying, and a renewed sense of caution in the global economy. Simply put, when the world gets nervous, gold gets stronger. Still, India's story is slightly different. Here, gold isn't just an investment. It's part of culture. And despite the slowdown, the festive and wedding season brought some relief. Many families advanced their purchases, fearing that prices may climb even higher. The World Gold Council expects India's total gold demand this year to end between 600 and 700 tons, likely on the higher side. Analysts at the recent Global Precious Metals Conference in Japan even predicted that gold could test $5,000 per ounce by next year. And if that happens, India will once again face a choice. Hold on to tradition or adapt to a world where gold is no longer just worn, but strategically owned. And our final story comes from Britain's royal family, who has seen its fair share of scandals, but few as damning as this. In a move that feels ripped straight out of the crown, King Charles has stripped his younger brother, Prince Andrew, of all remaining titles and even showed him the palace door.
And Prince Harry got kicked out for marrying an American woman. This is way worse. Way worse.
The 65-year-old once styled the Duke of York is now plain Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. The Buckingham Palace confirmed that Andrew has also been ordered to surrender the lease of his lavish 30-room royal lodge on the Windsor estate. King Charles's move, reportedly made with the full backing of the royal family, comes as the monarchy continues to distance itself from Andrew's long shadow ties to the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The decision also marks one of the most severe punishments even imposed on a senior royal in modern history.
It's a disgrace, I'll be completely honest. He's representing the country and he's meant to be the face of England. Is this what we represent? Is this what the people represent? No, it's a disgrace. So I'm happy he's got a strip of his titles, his royal titles as well. He should be kicked out of the country because these guys live off us. We're the working class, we're the people in charge, basically.
The family of the late Virginia Giaffer, who accused Andrew of sexually assaulting her when she was a teenager, praised the decision of King Charles. A family member stated in an interview, and I quote, "Today, an ordinary American girl from an ordinary American family brought down a British prince with her truth and extraordinary courage." End quote. Giaffer, who tragically died by suicide earlier this year, has long fought to expose Epstein's network of abuse and powerful men allegedly complicit in it. Her memoir, released shortly before her death, reignited public outrage against Andrew. The memoir has reportedly described Andrew as quote-unquote entitled and convinced it was his quote-unquote birthright to use her. The Buckingham Palace, in a rare statement, said that these censors are deemed necessary, notwithstanding the fact that he continues to deny these allegations against him. The statement further read that the Majesties wish to make clear that their thoughts and utmost sympathies remain with the victims and survivors of all forms of abuse. Once the Queen's charming second son and a hero of the Falklands War, Andrew's public image has eroded over 2 decades of poor decisions, tone-deaf interviews and mounting scandals. After stepping down as the UK's trade envoy in 2011, he was forced to quit all royal duties in 2019 following his disastrous BBC interview about Epstein. In 2022, he lost his military roles and royal patronages after settling a lawsuit with GFR for an undisclosed sum and without admitting guilt. That same year, he even retreated from public life, clinging to comforts of Windsor's Royal Lodge, where he reportedly hadn't paid rent in nearly 20 years. And now, even that safe haven is gone. As King Charles continues his cancer treatment, he's made it clear that no royal is above accountability, not even his own brother. So for now, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor may still have a roof over his head at Sandringham, but his royal life, much like his title, has been firmly stripped away. Because in the end, the monarchy survives, but Andrew's crown of privilege has crumbled for good. That's all for today. Thank you for joining us. I am Gursheen Gala and we'll see you right back here next week. Until then, stay informed and stay tuned to Firstpost.
We're going to have a very successful meeting. I have no